Some goals are meant to have you be on that track. Some goals you're going to accomplish, some goals you're not. But the goal is to at least try to get there. You reanalyze or you readjust based on what happened, what you saw, and basically new passions that may come in line.
Welcome to season number 2 of the Reach Your Prime podcast. I'm your host, Jared Barnes. Incredibly excited to share with you even more stories, even more perspectives on our show this season. Be sure to check out season number 1. Had some incredible guests on there as well. Season 2, man, we're taking it to a whole nother level. We have NFL players, sports business professionals, professors, thought leaders on the show. Incredibly excited to deliver another great season of the Reach Your Prime podcast. We will have content flowing the rest of this year. Be sure to stay tuned to primeu.org for the release of each show. And guys, keep following us because we're building along with you. We have a very special guest, Mr. Amobi Okugo. Amobi is kind of a jack of all trades, professional athlete / entrepreneur / investor / whatever his passion is about at the time. But really excited to dive into his story, learn more about him as a person, something that I know we value as athletes to be known as more than just a great player, but also as a person. So Amobi, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out and having me on the podcast.
Real quick, briefly, if you wanted to just share your background and experiences real quick for us to start us off.
No doubt. So I'm a first generation Nigerian American, oldest of 4 siblings, born and raised in California, played professional soccer, went to UCLA. I had the fortunate pleasure of leaving after my freshman year to pursue professional soccer. Entrepreneur, started a frugal athlete. I think we'll touch on that later. And yeah, like you said, I'm jack of all trades, but trying to be a king of all trades if that ever happens.
I like it, man. And you were subtle with it. You said had the privilege to leave after my freshman year. Walk us through that, man. You're this young, 18, 19 at the time?
Oh, yeah. So I was 18 at the time. I was able to convince my parents that you can go to school whenever, but you can't play professional soccer. So made a promise to my parents that as long as I finished my degree while playing, that they would let me leave school early. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to have some teams highly interested, and it led to me getting drafted after my freshman year.
That's incredible. We hear about these draft stories. We see it on TV. We read about it, Twitter, you name it. But man, just walk us through that, the kind of the nitty gritty of, okay, you just got drafted at Philadelphia Union. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Philadelphia Union, you're going from this kid in California. Now you're going to Philly. What was that like? And more importantly, what did you learn, about yourself in that process? Because to go through that so young, man, I have to imagine that was just a lot.
Yeah, so I grew up quick. Fortunately, the draft was held in Philly. So when I got drafted, I was able to meet like a lot of the staff, a lot of the fan base, because they had us do kind of like some promotional tours while we were there. So that kind of gave me like an introduction. But when I officially moved to Philadelphia, oh my gosh, there was a big change, especially being like I don't want to say a spoiled Cali boy because, with the weather, being at UCLA, but, Philly humbles you real quick, not only the weather, just the people, the energy. It's a go-getter, hustler city. So
I want to dive into that a little bit more, man, because I know not just athletes, but a lot of people listening to this show, we're real passionate about what we do and making that transition from passionate to professional.
It's a 24/7 job. Before you're playing, like you're just playing to compete, win trophies, get your name out. But once you become a professional, it's more than that. You're paying your bills. Depending on how you do, that could be the last of your game. Now when I was younger, you're playing with your age mates, you're playing with people a couple years older than you. But now I'm on a team with 32-year-olds, 28-year-olds. They're married, they have kids, they have other obligations. And competing with them, it kind of opens you up to a whole different realm of what professional sports is all about. We're no longer playing just for ourselves and, trying to win for bragging rights. I'm trying to make this bonus. I'm trying to make sure we get this win because I got to put food on the table. I got, mouths to feed. I got to pay for diapers. Like, it's a whole different ball game. When you go on a couple losing streaks, you can see the tension in the locker room kind of start to build. Winning, everyone's a little bit more happy. So different things like that, that dynamic of whatever you do off the field kind of correlates to on the field as well.
And that's something You don't necessarily read about that or see that all the time, but I can imagine it's just a different perspective. It's a different perspective at the game, and the margin for error is just much smaller. Margin to say, my bad, or you kind of
Exactly. Like after our first game, someone got like a red card, and literally I think he got cut like a week after.
Wow.
Yeah, that quick. I was like, whoa, like he doesn't get no second chance. Like it was his first game.
No, it can be tough. It can definitely be tough, but I think there's also some benefit to that. It helps you narrow your focus and realize where you're at. And so now, as you've transitioned into the entrepreneurial world, how have you seen that, in a sense, environment benefit you now as an entrepreneur?
It really benefited me just in terms of understanding, discipline and what you put in, you're going to get rewarded, and how to analyze results. So if I do like some type of marketing strategy or promotion and I see the results, then I know, okay, this didn't perform well. So instead of wasting more money putting dollars into that, all right, I got to change the structure based on, what's the scouting report now.
As you transition, I know a struggle for me personally is after I left the game, I wasn't sure how I was being evaluated, and I wasn't sure what success was. As you continued your playing career, what made you interested in entrepreneurship, and how did you start to define, what that success looked like, even though you were still in that current kind of very performance-based environment?
So I've always been interested in business and finance. So I think that my curiosity for entrepreneurship was always there. Like we always see, like you can talk about it or you can actually do something about it. So I feel like I was just talking about it, but then I was like, you know what, let me just do it. I have all this free time outside of just practice and then preparing for games that I can, kind of do something. So I finally did it. And it's been a tremendous learning experience and a blessing to have something of your own. But in terms of how I kind of measure success or how well I'm doing with the business, right now it's just impact, to be honest, because we're not at a point where, we're making enough money to, read a profit and loss statement, or we're not really, really worried about, how many followers we have on the social media channels. So we're focused on impact, how many people are able to use us as a resource. Right now, we're just measuring impact and how we're able to affect the mindset and change the narrative.
I love it. But man, for those of you who don't know Amobi and what he's about with his company, A Frugal Athlete, Amobi, you just want to dive into that a little bit and explain the mission, the vision, why you started it, what type of work you guys are doing?
A Frugal Athlete is basically an online platform where we try to promote prudent financial practices and smart career decisions amongst professional athletes, as well as teach financial literacy so these individuals are able to ask the right questions and do more with their money management. Many times you see athletes either go broke, or the athletes that are kind of the one-offs, like the Tom Brady, the LeBron James. And we wanted to create a positive atmosphere of younger athletes and student athletes, and even the fans that follow these athletes, to kind of aspire to and see positive reinforcements of people being prudent with their money and smart with their career decisions.
My question is, man, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but what gave you the audacity to think about doing that, to think about starting that, because to me, that's outside of the norm.
It was crazy. So I saw the 30 for 30 documentary Broke, and then I was doing my own research, and I really couldn't find any solid platform. Like you'd see like Forbes do an article here and there, Market Watch, Players Tribune was doing some like every now and then, but there was never like a go-to platform that had this information. I was like, why not us, basically? So me, my brother, my best friend got on it and started the platform.
I love it. And so you're doing all this while you're still playing, correct?
Yes, but right now I'm currently a free agent, so I have a little bit more time. So it's kind of been a blessing in disguise, in a sense, for me to kind of use this time where I'm not actively with the team to kind of have this as my baby.
I'm wired kind of the same way as you. But one thing I've struggled with is kind of just that anxiety, for lack of a better term of, I got to get there. I got to get this done. I got to get this done, man. Have you dealt with that in your career, as a professional or just as an athlete in general? How have you been able to handle that?
It's been tough because sometimes it doesn't go your way. Like I have like these goals, like for example, like my rookie year, I was like, all right, rookie of the year, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And it doesn't happen. So you're like, man, I failed. But then it's like, no, you just got to readjust your goals. Maybe it didn't happen how you were supposed to happen. That's been my struggle, like understanding that some things, it's like some goals are meant to have you be on that track, Some goals you're going to accomplish, some goals you're not. But the goal is to at least try to get there. You reanalyze or you readjust based on what happened, what you saw, and basically new passions that may come in line.
Gotcha, man. And I can totally attest to that, and being able to make adjustments, because in our mind, we have this image of what it should be. And then sometimes what it actually is doesn't always line up.
Exactly.
Man, when is the time, maybe you've had to make an adjustment as a player or as a professional?
Yeah. So I'll take my professional career, for example. Like, I was a high draft pick. So I thought right off the back, I was going to be one of the marquee guys, playing every game. And that didn't really happen until my second year. Then I got injured at an inopportune time because I was like really hitting my stride. So then by the time I came back, there was only a couple games left. But then it set me up for a third year where I feel like now I kind of know the city. I'm not going back home every chance I get, acclimated. I actually started out the season not playing, but the coach got fired. The new coach gave me an opportunity, didn't miss a game for the rest of the season. And that kind of gave me the springboard to how my career has played out now with the Frugal Athlete, basically starting with the Squarespace account, writing blogs, started off the back, got some good exposure, but I kind of rushed everything. So when people were like asking, where's the next blog, it gave me like a punch to the gut. Like, you need to restructure how you're doing everything. Once I restructured how I'm doing everything, next thing you know, I did a national publication with Forbes, back-to-back Market Watch, back-to-back #sports. So being able to get that gut punch, realizing I have to reorganize how I'm doing it, gave me the ability to kind of take that springboard that I didn't know I needed.
That's it, man. Oh, we're about to dive into this, man. I already know. As soon as you I'm like, yep, here we go. It only takes one opportunity for you to get it. Talk to me about that transformation of when you had that gut punch, because I think our audience knows from a athletic standpoint how to do that.
Like you said, like I started the blog, I had everything ready. Obviously,
Right.
with popularity as an athlete, starting his own thing, like you had the initial reaction, and then all of a sudden, like I checked my analytics. I was like, yo, how come no one's coming to the site? Like, what is going on? So I was like, all right, I need to take several seats back. And like you said, you can't just start off. Like every time you hear about these overnight success stories, it's never the case. Kind of got this gut punch. And I was like, all right, let me make sure I have some structure to this. So I reorganized how I'm doing the blogs. I'm not just going to have 5 blogs in a week. All right, now we're going to strategize it. Build the foundation first and not just focus on getting everything out to the site and not having any structure. And when I when I started doing that, within 2 months, Forbes, Market Watch, then I was able to partner with #sports and attend their conference. And then from there, not to say there hasn't been failures along the way through this process, but the failures are not as steep as it was when I just started off the bat.
It's all about consistency.
Exactly.
It's all about, I think everybody can give you that single, but can you produce an album? That's the real.
That's perfect. Let me write that down real quick. Hold up.
Everybody can produce. Everybody can do the single. Everybody can do. But can you do the album? I need to know. And then after you do the album, can you do another album?
Exactly.
And like you said, you never know what piece of content is going to be the one. You never know until it is. And so being prepared with the ability to scale and the ability to become sustainable. And I'm thinking, again, it's the whole monetization piece, but one trigger, I think for me, when I, kind of have a tendency to get emotional and upset is when I feel limited, especially when I feel like I have done all that I can do, yet limited by somebody else, whether it's limited in my identity, or you can only be this certain thing, or limited in what they think is possible for me. Man, have you ever felt that, being a pro soccer player now, exploring different areas? Have you ever felt limited, and how have you responded to that?
Like right now, because I'm a free agent trying to figure out what's next, both on the soccer front with the business, I've been doing like informational interviews, and I tell them about my situations and kind of my aspirations. And, a couple, highly successful people that say, sometimes you just have to focus on one thing.
Last section of the podcast, we call it Final Thoughts. Seriously, it's Final Thoughts or a thought, whatever you want it to be, man.
So my dad always used to say this quote. It was by this, I'm forgetting his name, but he used to be like a high school football coach. Then he turned into like big time insurance salesman. But all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. So I'm going to repeat it. All you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. Basically, just whatever you want to do, whatever you're passionate about, do it to your fullest potential. Don't let anybody put limitations on what you can or cannot do. As long as you're giving it your all, that's enough. And you're going to get rewarded. It may not be how you want or what you like envision, but you're going to get rewarded.
I'm with you, man. And it's like you're multidimensional. There's more than one.
Exactly.
There's more than one part to you, and I think sometimes that can intimidate people. That can really, especially if they're not multidimensional. But no, Amobi, I really appreciate your time. I have no doubt this is going to be beneficial to our listeners. It's going to help somebody just pursuing your passion, man. It doesn't matter necessarily where you're at right now. You just started. Really support everything you're doing, man. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. And I know we're going to keep in touch moving forward.
And now to the second half of our show, where we have a very special guest, Mr. Bobby Audley. Bobby's a former student athlete, lacrosse player, lacrosse coach, and a world-renowned leadership development facilitator. He's also been on multiple TED Talks and one of the best we've seen in the space.
So, Bobby, really excited to have you on the show today. Briefly, if you just wanted to introduce yourself, give us, your true introduction.
Thank you, Jared. Super happy to be on the show with you. I do leadership development. I think when I talk to coaches, most specifically, I'll say we do team culture training. And what I mean by that is we, as myself and my business partner, Ryan Pinot, but what we love to do at our core is taking a team of athletes through our training that is called Heart of an Athlete. And it is a full immersion experience. So no PowerPoint, no lecture. It's challenging. It asks for vulnerability. It asks for deeper relationship. It asks for you as an individual to fully invest and fully engage. And everything we do after that kind of goes on top of it. So if it's leadership development, if it's mental training, if it's a keynote, a workshop, it really is kind of coming from that core of that training experience.
What made you passionate about team culture?
It's been a growing process. And so when I went to college, I went with the mindset of you play college sports. And I wanted to win a national championship. I mean, I would go in my basement with Tony Robbins cassette tapes at the time and lift weights as a middle school student. And I'd take the mile run up to my local high school to play wall ball because lacrosse was my main sport. Got recruited out of high school to play at Salisbury University, Division III powerhouse program that has now won about 13 national championships. And so I was always interested in motivational speaking, leadership development, self-help, peak performance, but saw it through the avenue of coaching and kind of throughout the rest of my college years, really got involved in student government and student leadership and leadership development from that standpoint. And so when I graduated, I knew I wanted to be a leadership speaker is what I called it, and started my own business via speaking for free as many places as I could. So I took that job, started coaching lacrosse at that school as well. And my first paid event was with a student athletic advisory committee at the Division II level. And my goal even then was to work with athletes. But I remember thinking, I really need something that is going to serve athletes. And I went through the Heart of a Leader training that I've already kind of talked about a little bit with a guy named Ryan. And I'd already been through Tony Robbins. I'd already been through all sorts of different online programs and flown out to California for programs. And after going through this, halfway through day one, it's a 2-day program. Halfway through day one, I wrote in my notebook, like, this is it. This has to be with athletes. I talked to Ryan afterwards, said, have you ever done this work with athletes? And he said, not really. Certainly athletes have been in the room, but not really with a team. And my mission became to make that happen. And Ryan's first challenge to me was, well, number one, you have to sell. You have to prove to me that athletes are interested in this. And number two, you got to train under me, and you got to become a trainer of this and be world class at it. It's taken 8 years, but I've really gotten to a space where I feel like this is what I'm here to do, and this is a group we can really serve. And so that's as fast as I can share kind of my journey with that.
I think that last statement you said really impacted me. It's taken 8 years to get to this point. And I think in this day and age, people think it should take 8 months or weeks, 8 weeks to $8 million or something like that, and it's not always like that. I want to go back to Salisbury and just walk us through your mindset, not necessarily after the first time, but after that second time. And the opportunity you were pursuing to be a part of that lacrosse team, it didn't work out. It wasn't necessarily the Cinderella story. Walk us through how you were feeling and how you got through that.
Yeah, I was very tunnel vision focused as a student athlete. I got recruited to play at some really good schools. I got 4 letters to go to Princeton because my grades were really good. It's not because I was such a good lacrosse player. It's because my grades were good. Georgetown was another school again. But if you look at it, now looking back, you say, man, that would have been something to graduate from a school of that caliber. But I remember as a kid, I didn't care. I wanted to win a national championship in lacrosse. And my parents were awesome and still are at letting me make my own decisions. The first time I got cut, it destroyed me. And it seems silly to say it now when you consider the challenges that life throws you. But at the time as an 18-year-old kid, and this, that really destroyed me. And within 2 weeks, I had transferred out of this school that I really did enjoy because it wasn't going to allow me to play lacrosse. And so when I came back the second time and got cut, and the question was, do I do it again? Do I amp it up? Do I put everything I have into making this team my junior year, or do I move on? Do I find something else? And I think I was just so drained from putting everything I had into getting on this team again that I decided to move on. And it was hard to not feel like I wasn't quitting, and it took a mental reframe to say, it's not quitting, it's adapting, and it's finding a way to pour your passion into something else. And at the end of my sophomore year, I had recognized that I was pretty stretched thin from a place of schedule. I was pretty drained with my energy. I hadn't really accomplished anything in these clubs I had been a part of. And there were really 2 that stood out to me. One was Colleges Against Cancer. My grandfather had passed away that year from lung cancer, from smoking. And that organization was looking to make our campus smoke free. At the time, there's only about 300 campuses that were smoke free in the whole country. Now it's pretty commonplace, but at the time it was 300. And the other one was the club lacrosse team I really enjoyed. And we went to the national championship in club lacrosse, which I didn't even know was a thing. And we went to the national championship in club lacrosse. And I remember we lost in the championship game and I didn't even play. And I remember thinking, here I thought I was good enough for one of the best varsity teams in the country, and I'm not even playing on the club team, and we're losing. And it's because I'm not fully invested in anything. I'm dabbling in everything. So my junior year, I quit everything except for club lacrosse and Colleges Against Cancer. And that at the end of that year, we went back to the national championship game. We won the program's first and still only club lacrosse national championship. I was a starter on the team, named to the Final Four all-tournament team, which got me featured in Inside Lacrosse magazine, full-page picture and name. I just got lucky with the picture part. And then literally the weekend after that, I got an email from the president of the college saying that as a result of my efforts and 2 other folks who were pretty heavily involved in Colleges Against Cancer, Salisbury was going to be going smoke free for the first, at the time, one of only a handful of college campuses doing that. And that had been an effort they'd been trying to do for 10 years. But the president said there was never a group of students that really made it their focus and just spearheaded it. I look back on that experience and I remember 2 things. When I won the championship at the club level, I realized that it was for me. Still, if you talk to folks, people listening to this podcast, friends of mine, family members even, they might look at that and say, okay, good for you. We're happy for you. But, it's just a club thing. You're not on ESPN. It's not a Super Bowl. And for me, it was, though. For me, it was a Super Bowl. And that was a mind frame switch to say, live your life for you. Go after your goals because you want them. Don't look for a pat on the back. Don't look for other people to affirm you. Go after it because it fills you up. And then the smoke free, what I learned from that is my brother's at that campus now. And when I go to visit him, there's still signs on the wall that remind people that it's a smoke-free campus. And I can look at that and literally say I played a role in creating that and making that happen. And there really is something about leaving a place better than you found it that hit me pretty hard with that experience. So it's one of those situations where in hindsight, I just decided to go into life with an open heart, open mind, and able to say getting cut was the best thing that ever happened to me. And even that has taken probably 8 years to be able to say and reflect on all the growth that came after it.
I think you're absolutely right in the fact that, well, just listening to you, I hear that wasn't random, but then it seems you made another pivot or transition again when you said you stepped away from your full-time job in order to pursue, in a sense, to be a full-time leadership or excuse me, team culture trainer, facilitator. Walk us through that decision on top of everything that you learned at Salisbury, going through that experience, achieving those things at that age. Now you're facing not necessarily the similar decision, but a similar context in where you have to make a pivot or set of changes that are going to require you to be uncomfortable.
Well, I appreciate you kind of tying the two together because they certainly are connected. And still to this day, anytime I look at a big decision, you reflect on all the big decisions you've made. And that's the beauty of sports is it creates real life moments at a young age that you might otherwise not have. When I first graduated college, I was a graduate assistant at my university as their leadership intern. I showed up for work on the first day. My director, fantastic woman named Sarah Lowry, brings me into the office, sits me down and says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm here to work." And she goes, "You want my job in 10 years? And I said, "No." And she goes, "Well, then what do you want to do?" And I go, "I want to be a leadership speaker." And that's what I called it at the time too. And so I left that day. I left my grad assistantship, opportunity to get a master's, opportunity to get paid a little bit out of school. And that's when I started my business speaking and did that for 6 months. I had saved up money over the summer knowing I wanted to start my business, and my grad assistantship wasn't paying much at all. So I worked my butt off over the summer at a summer camp doing sports there and saved a bunch of money to be able to live on a little bit of a runway. I moved in with my girlfriend at the time and got the blessing from her parents because she had moved to an area where she didn't know and they didn't want her living alone. So we've been together for about 4 or 5 years. And so then I get my job and it was part-time for about 2 years. And then they promoted me to full-time. I was running leadership and orientation programming. And so it was in my wheelhouse. It was stuff I enjoyed. It allowed me to coach. And I really did love it. I enjoyed the job. And I remember I was getting to a point where I was side hustling the speaking training side of things. And I was having to take off all my vacation days, plus days, plus I got into unpaid time off. I'd taken about 14 days of unpaid time off. And my boss was super supportive of it, which made it possible, but it was also draining me. And I wasn't using the side hustle money for like an end of the year vacation or on a house. I was putting it all back into the business. So it was great for growth. But I got to a point where I was feeling as if I was doing about 10 events a year at that rate. And I did that consistently for 3 years. And I felt stagnant. And as I was wrestling with this, my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, was going through a career transition of her own. So I looked at her and said, "Well, I'm not going to hold you back from what you want to do. I'll quit my job and I'll do my business." And of course, the question arises, how is it going to work? How are we going to pay the bills? So we were going to be okay if I didn't get any work. And so with that, it was very much I certainly didn't jump without a net from that perspective of having the runway and my wife having a job. I had a kick in the butt to say, in order for her to follow her passion, she needs me to do this. And in my head, it was, you know what? Masters and working in higher ed will always be there. I'm at a time right now, no kids, no real commitments, that I can take some risks. And I don't want to look back on life and say, what if I gave this everything I had? What could I have created? And so that's really what kicked me to do it and to leave my job. And that wasn't easy.
Now we fast forward to 2018. How have you been able to embrace and tolerate risk in what you're doing now?
I think it comes with trusting yourself. I mean, there are days where you're sitting at home alone, just piling through the work. There's days where you're traveling in the middle of absolute nowhere and flights are delayed. And I was sitting on a plane for 5 hours this past fall, and you sit there and say, like, is this my life's work? Is this what I'm to do? And a constant reminder for me is stay the course. That is I very much trust my gut when I'm dealing with setbacks and rejection from a sales perspective. There's a mentor of mine who gave me this line: if you really believe in what you're selling, if someone says no to you, then it's not that, and you believe they need it, then you obviously didn't explain yourself well enough. And so I live by that every single day. If I'm getting no's, it's not about a numbers game. It's not about, well, not everybody needs it. It's I'm not explaining myself well enough, and how can I explain it better? Because I truly believe that what we're doing is needed in the world, and specifically for me in the world of sports right now. And that keeps you going. And it might sound cliche and it might sound overly motivational speakery, but it's the truth.
It's so interesting just listening to you. I think it's all about courage, in my mind is, when you make that step and you're pushing through, you have to have the courage, enough courage to be patient, but also enough courage to be urgent. I think courage is like that, the intersection between patience and urgency.
To jump on the urgency idea, I always say, what's something I can do today? Well, today I can go work with a local community college team. I can speak for free at a student government retreat. And you keep taking that what can I do today step, and that'll eventually get you to where you want to go. And that's where the patience comes in. That's where the resiliency comes in. And you just continue to keep asking yourself that question. Not what can I do Monday? What can I do today? In our training, we quote the book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And I believe the numbers it's like 45 to 90 days to create a habit in your mind. And so we'll often look at, I'll work with a team and they'll say, our goal is to be conference champions. And it's like, great. Do you want the reward or do you want the work that comes with it? So many people want the end result, but you got to want the work. You don't put up with the work. You don't tolerate the work. You got to want the work. And when you want the work, you're putting in the work. For a season might be 45 to 90 days. So if you're trying to develop a mental habit, a mindset of resilience, a mindset of grit, a mindset of determination, that's every single day in practice. When coach says, get on the line, you're standing straight up. You're not leaning over. And for the sole purpose of training your mind, that's how you show up for every little moment.
I love it, man. And honestly, one of the things I love the most about entrepreneurship is the best players play. Mm-hmm. It's period. Best players play, man. And if you're not improving and not getting better, you may potentially be out of business.
When I first started in this, I went to a conference and I grabbed a guy who I looked up to and admired. And I said, what's your advice for me as a first-time speaker? And he said, number one, get training. Find someone who will train you. And number two, show up for year two, because too many people after the rejection of year one never show up for year two, and the growth comes in year two or year three or 4, 5, 6. And so I look at that as and my commitment is one thing, one event, one seminar, because I read books daily, but like fully immersed in training at least once a year. The best decision I've made to date has been to work with Ryan Pinot. And like I said, I cannot overestimate how hard he and I worked. His belief as a trainer is if you can do 5 minutes at a phenomenal level, then you can do 2 days at a phenomenal level. Like, it's getting yourself to be able to hone that. You have to be constantly improving on what you do. There's some business tactics to know, but be really great at what you do and people are going to call you back, especially in the world of social media and the internet nowadays. Your video that you create on your phone is being consumed next to a professionally done video by a guy like Gary Vee, who's been practicing this for decades and spending a lot of money on it. And no one cares that you're younger and less experienced. They're comparing your video to his. So you better be putting out the best of the best stuff.
Absolutely. And I'm laughing to myself because it's so true. A lot of people don't necessarily understand that, where it's very real and you have to continue to improve. It's what are you doing to stand out? What makes you unique? I'm just, man, how can I win this opening? How can I win this opening? How can I build momentum? Whether that's, a single presentation, whether that's a day, whether that's a week, a month, a year, it's how can I win this opening? Where I'm sure you could tell a million stories about when things are going well. It's like, man, everything is awesome. My life is great. When things aren't going so well, it's like, dude, my life is horrible.
Yeah.
Anything that is just, on your mind to share. And then we do have one final question after that. But, final thoughts, we just open it up to anything you may want to share, any tidbits of advice, anything about you shared along your journey or anything like that.
On the pre-guide, you asked, like, if you had one tweet for humanity, what would it be? It's don't just want the reward, want the work, want the sacrifice, want the long hours, want the early mornings, late nights, and don't complain about any of it. If you don't plan to complain about the reward, don't complain about the work, do the work. The trick, everybody wants the secret sauce. Everybody wants the top 10 things I can implement today. And I guess I've done a lot of that stuff over the years and read a lot of it. And I think a lot of it is trying to take something that is a grind and make it simple. Most of my work is done on weekends, and certainly I'd love some weekends, more weekends home with my wife and my family and friends. And I love the work I do, and it couldn't put me in any other place. And so find the work that you love to do. You'll do it. When I talk to athletes and I say to them, if you get a day off, are you playing your sport? And they say no. I'm like, well, you're playing your sport too much then. Because if we got a day off growing up, we'd get a snow day from school. We're shoveling off the turf to still play. We're not, for us, it's fun. It's a game. And so that needs to be, I think, brought back into sport a little bit. It's been too professionalized. This should be fun, and we should want to play it every minute. And so should any work that you're doing. You should enjoy it. One thing that I've been really hitting lately in the world of athletics is coaches are educators. And I think too often we forget that as well. We are educators first. Certainly winning is a part of what you're supposed to do, but you're also an extracurricular that's meant to develop young people. And how can we do that best? I think is going to keep us focused too. And that makes, when we talk about doing the work, it's making the work worth it, because it's not just to win a game at the end of the season. It's doing the work to develop the resiliency and the presence of mind and the mindsets.
I completely agree. You have to love the game. Just love the game. Be able to appreciate it for what it is and enjoy it. Bobby, thank you so much. Really admire your spirit, your journey, the work you're doing right now. Thank you so much for joining us.